What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some MMA DFS picks, lineup advice, UFC Vegas 48 card best bets, predictions, everything you need for FanDuel strategy and betting. Jamal Hill, Johnny Walker. We're here. We had a little bit of a week off last week. My apologies. I was in Vegas. Jake, sorry we missed last week, but I'm glad we're back doing this together tonight.
Yeah, man, I can't believe you missed a Casey O'Neill stream slate, but it happens. Super Bowl, Vegas. I'll forgive you.
I did watch the fights out there, and we were able to catch the Casey O'Neill fight live. Believe me, I will never miss a King Casey fight, especially after how well she treated me in her debut. So, had to catch her fights. Jake. He's Jake the Snake, owner of MMA DFS.com, on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Go check out his work at MMADFS.com. In this video, it's about 10 minutes long. What we normally do is break down the main event, what it means for betting and DFS. We talk about the newcomers on the card, what their prognostications are, their backgrounds, what to expect from them, our favorite fights to target in DFS, a couple low-owned fighters to target for your tournament lineups, and a couple of our favorite bets at the end of the show. If you're not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Less than 50% of our viewers are subscribed to the channel, so don't be one of those guys. Subscribe to the channel, get notified when we go live, upload any new videos. Football's over, but we have a ton of content planned, so make sure you don't miss out on those. Give us a thumbs up if you like the UFC content. Any questions, comment on the video, or join our Discord server. Click the join button below this video and get access to other members of the AcrobatFantasy.com community, me, Jake, everybody else, and come sweat the fights with us on Saturday nights. So, Jake, let's jump into it. Jamahal Hill, Johnny Walker. I do have the DraftKings screen up here, and I do have both those guys in the lineup because that's the general strategy we take for low-risk contests on DraftKings. But before we get into that, Jake, give us the rundown on this main event, how we think it scores, who we think wins, and then what it means for DFS contests.
Yeah, so we got Jamahal Hill. He's coming off a career best DFS performance against Jimmy Crute. Super tough matchup there. Hill bounced back from that dislocated elbow. He suffered his first career loss against Paul Craig on that terrible armbar submission that, of course, the ref did not call a submission. So all those plus 1,400 Paul Craig round one submission bets right out the window. And then Jamahal Hill's sitting there with his arm flapping around. Terrible sight, just pretty horrific to watch. But he bounced back, got a 48-second round one KO over Jimmy Crute. Looked like he knocked him down a couple times. They only gave him credit for one, or else his score could have even been bigger. But comes in with a 9-1 record, 5 KOs, 4 decisions, just that one loss. His last 3 wins have all come by KO, although one of those got overturned when he tested positive for pot. But either way, he's been knocking everyone out in the first 2 rounds. And looking great. He scored 127 DraftKings points in his last fight. So that he finally showed his ceiling. And even though we're not expecting this fight to go 5 rounds, he showed that he can put up a huge score. We're expecting a finish in the first 2 rounds here. Likely a KO, whoever gets it. But yeah, it would be surprising if this fight lasted very long. And we're not really expecting to see any grappling. Hill's just a pure striker, averaging about 7.5 significant strikes landed per minute. So good volume. But yeah, not going to see much grappling here. And on the other side, we get Johnny Walker, just complete wild man, 8-6 in his career. He's kind of on a skid right now. He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He's coming off that 5-round snoozer against Thiago Santos. No one expected that fight to go the distance. That was absolutely ridiculous. The 2 guys just stared at each other for the whole time. Really, really weird, just bizarre showing. And if you watched Santos's fight before that against Rakic, kind of a similar thing. So I think we can blame that more on Thiago Santos than on Johnny Walker. But I think one notable thing on Walker is he did switch teams for his last 2 camps. He's in SBG Ireland now. So, I mean, who knows what they're doing to him? Maybe they saw that, his cardio was an issue and they're trying to get him to slow down because the guy's always been crazy. All 4 of his UFC wins have come by round 1 KO. Of his 18 career wins, 15 have come in the first round. I mean, so he's basically just a balls to the walls, crazy man that comes out swinging. But, now he's finally gone 5 rounds, whereas in the past, whenever he made it past the first round, he looked absolutely gassed. So we'll see how he looks here. I imagine he has to be more aggressive than his last fight. I mean, for a guy known for, being exciting, you don't want to have 2 completely boring fights in a row. But I mean, who knows what his team's doing to him? He got some weird advice, even going into the 5th round of his last fight. It was 2-2 on the scorecards. In hindsight, we know that. And they were just telling him, keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. Like, you're doing good. Like, really weird coaching, I thought, looking back at it. Just like, didn't tell him to go win the fight. Didn't tell him to get aggressive. So, I mean, that's the only concern. But in reality, we're expecting to see a knockout in the first 2 rounds here. It would be really surprising to see anything different. But, there's always, in the back of your mind, you got to think about that Santos fight. But so, assuming it goes kind of the way we think, most likely whoever wins is going to end up in the winning lineup. If Walker gets a finish, he's so cheap, really, really, near impossible for him not to end up in the winner. And with Hill, the only way he doesn't end up in the winning lineup is if the other top-priced fighters end up outscoring him, which is certainly possible. But, he's a high-volume guy, probably going to get some knockdowns if he gets a finish. So, he should score well. So, really good chance that the winner of this fight ends up in the optimal lineup on both sides. And I went back and forth a little bit on this on DraftKings for low risk, but I think you still play both of them. Just, for the upside of whoever wins and what it lets you do with the rest of your lineup. So for low risk contests, it's not an ideal week, but I think you're still going to stack it on DraftKings and low risk.
Right, and unlike some weeks, we don't have any mispriced fighters as underdogs. No one truly mispriced. The salaries are pretty much in line and ordered as the money lines are, which means we shouldn't see any one underdog get exceptional ownership in any contest type, which makes it even more likely that we want to stack the main event in our low-risk lineups, as you see here on screen. So let's move along. Let's talk about the 4 fighters making their UFC debuts. I'm going to bring up the Occupy model at OccupyFantasy.com, ranks every fighter, FanDuel, and DraftKings, has projected ownership, has line movements, and our proprietary OF index to rank the fighters. So, Jake, if we look at the 4 fighters making their debut, and if we talk about them in order of highest price to lowest price fighters, we have Chad Anheliger making his debut against Jesse Straiter, who is in his second UFC fight. Talk to me about Anheliger.
Yeah, so Chad comes in with a 11-5 pro record. Interestingly, all 5 of those losses came by submission, but those were all in his first 7 pro fights. So he started out 2-5 as a pro, just probably the worst way you could possibly start. Probably considered retiring at that point, but instead he switched teams. He took a couple of years off, really refocused on his grappling. Said he showed up to the new gym and they threw him a white belt. We're like, look, you gotta start over on your grappling, buddy. And so now he's a brown belt. He worked his way up to that, and he comes in on a 9-fight winning streak since that rough start. 7 of those wins came early. He's got a knockout over Brady Heisted, the Ultimate Fighter finalist. He's the only person to ever finish him. But overall, even with the work on his grappling, still just really a pure striker. I would say his grappling improvements are really more for defensive purposes. He'll throw up a guillotine. That's about it. He gets the easiest matchup of all the guys debuting here. He gets Jesse Straiter, who, making his second UFC fight. So we'll see. Jesse Straiter had a rough debut against Montel Jackson. So Chad's got a favorable matchup here as a debuter, and it's probably why he's the favorite, whereas a couple of these other guys are underdogs. But I guess the other thing is he won a split decision on Contender Series, just going against a pure grappler. So he didn't really get to showcase his striking in that fight. He was just defending takedowns the entire time. Really close split decision. So it's kind of hard to take away too much from that match. So I don't think that we're going to see people really chasing him because it wasn't a flashy fight in Contender Series. So I don't think he's going to be super high owned. But he has a pretty good knockout chance. So, just overall, just pure striker. And, he's a guy looking for knockouts pretty much.
Cool. The other fighter making their debut as a favorite is Nicholas Moda, who was expected to debut a while ago. We had it charted. Mm-hmm. That fight got canceled. He's had a long layoff now, but he is making his debut now against veteran Jim Miller, who I think has more fights has been fighting longer than this guy's been alive, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, man, 100%. That is accurate. So yeah, like you said, Moda was originally scheduled to make his debut last May. That got canceled. Then he was scheduled in September against Miller in the same matchup. Miller got COVID, dropped out. Cameron Van Camp stepped in, and then at weigh-ins, Van Camp dropped out. So, this is like his fourth booked opponent to make his debut. It's been 15 months since Moda last fought. Obviously, that's not ideal. That was a November 2020 decision win on the Contender Series. Pretty good fight. I would say that was a much better fight than the Chad fight, but also didn't get a finish. Still finished in a decision. Long layoff. He's another guy that's a pure striker. Really doesn't offer anything in terms of grappling. I think he's, believe, coming in with a 12-3 record, 8 knockouts, 4 decisions. Basically, a guy that's either going to get an early knockout or fight to a decision. But he's also been finished in all 3 of his losses. He's been knocked out twice and submitted once. If you watch his last knockout, his opponent had to be like taken off in a stretcher. So I mean, clearly this guy hits pretty hard. Definitely can do some damage, and still a pretty young guy too. So I would say still probably a guy in the rise, but really, really tough matchup. So probably a guy that we're going to be more interested in his second fight than in this debut.
I think there's a couple fighters like that on this card. The other two making their debut are at the bottom of the salary pool, Jay Perrin and Christian Rodriguez. Talk to me about these two guys, Jake, since they're both in kind of similar spots as big underdogs.
Yeah, so both these guys took their debut on really short notice, like less than a week. I think Perrin, he was announced Monday. Rodriguez was announced, I want to say Sunday. So less than a week notice for both of these guys, which, I mean, historically, that's always a really, really tough spot. You're coming in on short notice, no time to prepare. The one thing with Perrin is he had been preparing for a 5-round CES title fight anyways. That was scheduled 2 weeks from now, I believe. So that definitely helps with your conditioning if you're already getting ready for, a fight, let alone a 5-round fight. So I think that's definitely going to help him. Both these guys were slow to weigh in today, which isn't surprising with the short notice nature. But so Perrin comes in. He's just a pure grappler, pretty much 9-4. Not great striking, but just kind of a relentless grappler. Like one of those guys with a motor. He's just going to be looking for takedowns the whole time, pushing guys up against the fence. He actually lost the decision on Contender Series back in 2019, which I thought he won that fight. I guess I could see it. It was close. It could go either way, but he won in all the statistical categories, but still lost the fight. Since then, he's won 2 in a row. He's now won 7 of his last 8, with that Contender Series fight being his only loss. Basically, all of his finishes end in round 2 submissions. So, I mean, he's either looking at round 2 submissions or decisions, which make him a pretty interesting guy to bet on. But 4 of his last 5 fights have gone the distance. He's been in a couple 5-round fights. So I don't think we really need to worry about his cardio, despite the short nature of his debut. And then Rodriguez is, I would say, sort of the opposite. He's just kind of a pure striker, doesn't really offer much in terms of grappling. He's actually taken this up a weight class, which I think is really important to pay attention to. He's generally fought at 135. He did have a catchweight fight at like 150 recently, but this fight's going to be at 145. It's Jonathan Pierce, who he's actually fought up at 155. So really big size difference here going on. I think we're going to see Rodriguez drop back down to 135 after this. So like pretty clear he's fighting up a weight class. Still a young guy, just 24 years old, 7-0, pretty padded record, honestly. Hasn't really fought anybody. But he has 6 finishes, so I mean, you got to give him credit for that. His only time going to a decision was on Contender Series. He actually fought Tracy Cortez's brother, who was trying to take him down the whole fight. So it ended up being a pretty boring fight. Rodriguez didn't really get to showcase his striking, so it wasn't very impressive. But if you look at his fight before that, the CFFC, I believe, he looked a lot better there. It wasn't against a great opponent. I feel like the guy was just sort of like standing there letting him tee off on him, but definitely looked better. I've got a lot of concerns on Rodriguez going against Pierce here. I think this is, a brutally tough spot for Rodriguez. So I prefer Perrin over Rodriguez, the 2 underdogs in that situation.
I think that's fair. And again, a lot of these guys debuts short notice are just in the toughest spots from a trends perspective. And many of these fighters we like to target in their second fights. I don't know how many of these fighters fit the bill, but we'll certainly be more intrigued in them. And the field is usually lower on those fighters in those spots after they put up 4 DraftKings points in their debut. So that's when we can hop on them. So just keep that in mind when we see these names pop up again for their second fight. So Jake, let's talk about fights to target. I imagine I'm going to bring up the daily plug here, which is at OccupyFantasy.com. Jake writes it, puts in his top plays, lineup strategies, best bets. Make sure you check it out. If we look at the highest finishing probabilities, the Buckley and Al Hassan fight is up there, and I imagine that's one of the most targeted fights outside the main event by the field because of the KO power. There are some concerns there, and we don't want to give you the obvious pick. So, Jake, for tournaments, what fight beside the main event and besides that fight are you most interested in targeting both fighters for your tournaments?
I mean, I think the slam dunk one is the Parker Porter Alan Badeau fight. I mean, really, really hard to see the winner of that not putting up a huge score. I mean, if you watch Badeau's last fight, the guy landed 50 significant strikes in the first round and then kind of just fizzled off after that. I mean, Porter's been in back-to-back crazy brawls where he's landing a ton of volume. I think that fight we're going to see an absolute nutty amount of volume, and Badeau's never been to a decision, so I
I
don't
can see
really
why.
think that changes here. But we'll see. I mean, you never know. But I think we're going to see a ton of volume, and I think we're going to see a finish probably in the second round, most likely by Porter. But I mean, who knows? Porter's not like a great talent, so I mean, I think Badeau's just an overinflated light heavyweight, which makes it harder for him to knock out actual heavyweights. But at the same time, you know, Porter's been knocked out in the first round at multiple points, so it wouldn't be shocking at all. So I think that's the easy one. And then I think there are a couple of under the radar fights you can target. I think the Chad and Helliger Straiter fight, you know, I think that's going to end in a knockout winner score as well. And I think the really under the radar one is the Belbita De Paula fight, which should see crazy volume. A little bit less likely for a finish, but I think we see really high volume and they're both evenly priced. And the one I really loved coming in was the Onama Benitez matchup, but I don't know, man. Benitez looked pretty rough in the scales, missed weight. I think I had to pull that off my list of fights to target, and now we're just looking at, you know, playing Onama.
Yeah, we'll just play Onama instead, and that's all we got to do because Medina's missed my a couple pounds, didn't look great, and then we know if you watched our videos before, we know that's another red flag from a trends perspective for fighters. Jake, any fighter we haven't talked about that's going to be sub 25, sub 20% on DraftKings that you're extra excited about for tournaments?
Um,
It's kind of gross this week. There aren't that many that stood out to me.
yeah, I really like Belbita. She's a little bit over that threshold. She's in like the mid to high 20s, although you never know where she'll show up. Like it's always possible she could be a little bit under projections, but I really like Belbita, man. I think this is a good spot for her. I think she might get a finish here, and I think she's going to land a ton of volume. I think that's going to be like a wild just brawl.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, and yeah, if you check the daily plug, Jake has an interesting take on that fight, so make sure you check it out. All right, time to finish up the show here with our favorite bet. We'll do a stream parlay. Jake, I will start, and again, we talked about this before when we talk about the bets where the derivative props, the round props, the by method props don't necessarily reflect the history of a fighter or even a fighter's skill set. A lot of times it's just derived from the money line and the total. And for whatever reason, Al Hassan, who exclusively wins by round one knockout, is plus 140 on the money line. Yet his round one KO line is plus 550. And we're going to take a stab at that every single time he's fighting if they're going to continue to put those odds out there. So that's my side of the parlay.
Dude, it makes no sense. It's just an auto bet. You know, you bet it every time. Like it hit last time. I mean, literally 100%, 100% of his wins have been by round one KO.
Like, how else is he winning? He's not going to win this fight else. Like maybe round two,
Right,
but it's not encompassing, 10%
right.
or 20% of his outcome. That's crazy. Okay, anyways, your side. Sorry.
It's so nuts, man. So in a similar thing to that, I really like Pierce round two win. You know, he's really good at just like getting people out of there in the second round through ground and pound or submissions. He has this crazy trend of second round wins. So I'm gonna go Pierce round two win plus 650 over the short notice newcomer fighting up a weight class. So that should be a pretty healthy parlay with those. Yeah, it should be about 47, 48 to 1 on the money.
I think we'll take that if it hits. So if you want to bet that, be sure to check out our deposit bonuses at our partner Sportsbook. Click the betting link at OccupyFantasy.com in the main menu. Check out your state, get a free deposit bonus, and use that on some of the bets we've talked about, or the bets that Jake talks about in the plug, or at his site, MMADFS.com. Go read it. Read the sheet where he breaks down every single fight from a betting and DFS perspective. He also has premium content. Go check it out. Jake does great work. Check us out, OccupyFantasy.com. Read the daily plug, and check out the Occupy model and lineup builder to help you build all types of lineups, as many as you need for your FanDuel and DraftKings lineups. So that'll do it for the show. Appreciate you listening. UFC Vegas 48. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get notified when we go live. Upload any new videos over the course of the 2022 calendar year. Give us a thumbs up if you like the UFC content, and follow us on Twitter. You see our names here on the screen. And yeah, check us out on Discord if you have any questions or comment on the video. Click the join button below the video to access our Discord server. For Jake, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening, and good luck in the fights.